into the night on BBC One as votes are counted and results come in. We're live with reaction and analysis from elections 2025.
Good evening. It's not yet a year since Labour's massive win at the general election. The Lib Dems, Reform and the Greens prospered then too as the Conservatives crashed and burned. But 9 months is a lifetime in politics these days. So tonight, every party leader has something to prove. It's the first time Sir Keir Starmer is facing the voters since moving into number 10. He's had a very bumpy start in office, raising tax and cutting benefits. So as the votes are counted, we'll find out if there's a political price to pay. The Tories' new leader, Kemi Badenoch, has to pick up the pieces after their hammering last year. Can she show her party and the public that she can do any better? Last year, Sir Ed Davies' antics on the campaign trail paid off, the Lib Dems picking up seats across the south of England. So can he repeat those tricks tonight? But it's Nigel Farage who hopes to spoil all their fun. If the opinion polls are right, it's his party, Reform, that's on the verge of huge success, striking fear into the heart of the traditional parties. And in the next few hours, of course, Professor Sir John Curtice will be with us as the results start to come through. And a warm welcome to election 2025, the first real voters' verdict on the not-so-new government, and a real-life challenge for Reform UK after months of hypothetical success in opinion polls. Actual ballots being counted now will determine not just who makes decisions that affect millions of people's lives, but they'll shape the fortunes of the politicians who aspire to power. In the next few hours, a cast of cabinet ministers and opposition politicians will be with us live in the studio as the night unfolds. But let's take you straight to what is happening right now on the ground. This is what's going on in Widnes. That's where the count is underway to choose the next MP for the constituency of Runcorn. Labour's been trying to cling on there, but Reform are hopeful of knocking them out. Then let's go to Grimsby in Lincolnshire, where Reform also reckons they have a good chance of winning the mayoral contest. A former Conservative MP, Dame Andrea Jenkins, is after that new job. And the party also wants to do some damage in the county council. Let's cross then to Doncaster, where the ballot boxes are open and being counted in another of the 4 mayoral competitions where we think we'll get the results in the next few hours. Before, though, we go any further, I want to give you the rundown of where voting has actually been going on. 23 councils across England have been having elections today, including places like Northumberland in the northeast, Shropshire and Kent. Votes were cancelled in some other areas this year, you might remember, because some councils are being reorganised. But voters in Wales and Scotland will have to wait till next year for votes, and in Northern Ireland, there won't be one until 2027. But the public in England is choosing a mayor in 6 different places. 2 of those are brand new jobs, and some of the BBC's reporters will be at every single one of those counts tonight. But one of the first big headlines of the evening is set to be the result in the first by-election of Keir Starmer's government. Whatever happens, it will be history. The MP for that constituency, Runcorn and Helmsby, had to stand down after assaulting a member of the public. And that gave Nigel Farage a chance to have a crack at taking another MP. Well, our political editor, Chris Mason, is at the count in Widnes tonight. Chris, people have been suggesting it's tight as a drum there, but what does it look like tonight?
Yeah, evening to you, Laura. So we're just waiting the final ballot boxes arriving. That should happen pretty soon, and then the counting for real can properly get underway here. The night is still young. We've got several more hours before we get the result here. The mood really striking. So the chairman of Reform UK, Zia Youssef, has been here in the Count Centre already. They are sounding upbeat, they are sounding chipper. They've thrown a huge amount at this campaign, both physically. Nigel Farage was here campaigning today and has been several times. Prime Minister didn't visit a single time, and also digitally in terms of their presence on social media. Labour tonight sounding really defensive, both here and indeed the prospect of the picture around the UK, both those elections being counted tonight in England and then plenty more elsewhere in local authorities in England tomorrow. So the mood very, very clear, one of smiles from Reform and defensive fear, really, from Labour. But as you were mentioning, you know, Labour won this with a stonking majority a year ago, or under a year ago. So, you know, Reform have a lot of ground to make up. And yes, it could be tight, because the expectation is that the turnout will be low. So every last door knocked on in the last few minutes, counting up to 10 o'clock, speaking to both those two parties, they were aware it really mattered. But the mood from the two big players here, striking in its contrast and stark.
And Chris, let's zoom out for a bit. For all the parties who are contenders tonight in different parts of England, what's at stake, if you can take us through them?
Yeah, it's really interesting, this, Laura, isn't it? Because here we are with a set of local elections less than a year after a general election, and where in numerical terms it's pretty shrivelled. So, you know, you look at the number of seats being contested, and it's the smallest number of council seats being contested since the 1970s. And yet, there's a real sense from so many of the parties of a lot being at stake because of this splintering that we're seeing in the opinion polls at the moment, and we could well see evidence of in the next 24 hours. So from Labour's perspective, a year in government that, as you say, has been tough. Now, broadly speaking, this is a set of elections not in their natural territory, but they are sounding defensive pretty much everywhere, including in places where they've previously been strong, like Doncaster in South Yorkshire. From the Conservatives, a high watermark for them last time round when so many of these councils were fought in 2021. It was the sort of Boris Johnson bounce after the vaccine rollout following the pandemic. They have been doing bucket loads of expectation management, the Conservatives, for weeks on end, basically saying they think they're going to do absolutely terribly. And there's plenty of suggestions that point in the direction that might turn out to be a pretty accurate prediction. The Liberal Democrats are chipper. They hope to, if you like, roll over the success that they had, spectacular success they had at the general election last year in areas where they were fighting the Conservatives successfully at the general election. They hope to be doing the same, particularly but not exclusively in the south of England. They are saying tonight that they are on course for their best ever winning streak. The Green Party have been showing consistent success in local elections for the last handful of years and hope to continue with that. And one thing we should always point to in English local elections, often overlooked but important, independent candidates, both those who are independent standing on their own ticket and then collections, clumps of independents in particular parts of the country who can prove significant on nights like this. I think I've managed to trot through all of the parties. Tell me if I haven't, but there you go.
5 out of 5, Chris.
Smattering of no doubt other parties as well in the mix, but 5 out of 5. Thank you. Phew.
5 out of 5, and even a mention for the independents, so 10 out of 10. Chris Mason, thank you so much indeed. And let's just go through in a bit more detail some of the context of the different pieces of the jigsaw that Chris was mentioning there. As we start the night, these are important pieces of context to have in your minds. So the last time these elections were fought was back in 2021. And who was riding high then? Well, it was the Conservatives. They did incredibly well at those local elections under somebody called Boris Johnson. The country was just climbing out of the worst of the pandemic, and the vaccine rollout had brought the government quite a lot of popularity. And things were so bad for the Labour Party then, on 29%, Keir Starmer, we now know, even thought about resigning. So that was the last time that the seats being fought tonight in county councils were up for grabs. So keep that in mind in the next few hours. Then, this is how the universe has completely changed. This is the average of polling from last month, April 2025. And who has consistently been in top position? It's the turquoise bar there. You can see Reform UK on an average of 26%, ahead of the Labour government, despite that whopping majority they won back in July, and consistently the Conservatives polling there in third place, and the Lib Dems and then the Greens further down. So that shows us we are in not just a different planet of politics now compared to the last time this election was fought, but we really are in a completely different universe. That, though, is the test for Reform tonight. Can they translate that into real power in county halls and into another member of Parliament? Then, though, I want to show you what is actually at stake tonight in terms of the council contests. The Conservatives are defending nearly 1,000 council seats, way more than the other parties. And the reason I want to show you that number is because that translates into a truth here. The vast majority of these contests are taking place in parts of England that traditionally would be seen as safe, true blue Tory heartlands. So that's where most of the contests are happening. I suspect we're going to hear other politicians point to that fact rather a lot in the next few hours. But having given you a taste of the overall landscape, let's have our first conversation with Professor Sir John Curtice. John, we've just been talking about the polling landscape. If that hypothetical set of numbers translates into real votes, what kind of results are we likely to be looking at over the next, 18 hours?